Hey folks, good morning. Sorry I'm a little late. Welcome back to Sunday. This is a unplanned live stream as I had planned originally on not doing a live stream this morning. Um, but yeah, finished what I had to do this morning. I got it done, and so I had the time, so I figured I'd jump in and do it anyways. Uh, yes, Phil, that was me in the 90s. Um, I figured I would share a picture. I'm pretty sure that's a picture of me at a table with my friends and my siblings, either discussing something that I was really into or possibly running D&D. I'm not sure. Yeah, um, I had good hair. At one point, I had really long hair, like down to the middle of my back. And then I cut it off, and then it just continued to grow. It goes all curly when it gets longer. Um, Without the scruff on my face, I've been accused of having like a Jim Morrison look at the mid-range hair too. So, but that was when I was younger, in my 20s. All right, so um, not a lot of folks watching, to be expected, considering I said there wasn't going to be a stream today. Um, Sorry, I got something stuck in my teeth. Uh, Today's topic is an impromptu topic that was kind of born from what it was that I was doing this morning. Um, Full transparency, and because I think it's important to talk about, I have started going to therapy again. Started therapy again, and going is kind of a misnomer because it's virtual these days, which is good. A couple of things that I have going against me is I have a serious case of ADHD that's just never really gone treated. And so while therapy can't do much for me on that regard, it can do a lot for me in regards to a couple of other things I have, which is a severe case of anxiety. I don't have like crippling anxiety to where I think that, everything horrible is going to happen, but I do have a level of anxiety that really makes it difficult for me to socialize. And I didn't realize this. I've always known it was there, but I didn't realize how bad it was until COVID and being home and isolated for 3 years. Um, and now that I'm in a new place, away from everybody, I mean, I made no secret about it on other streams. I have had a huge move in the middle of my life. Um, and I'm well away from everything I've ever known, all the people I've ever known, all the people I've gamed with. My whole social scene is now gone. So here I am, 52 years old, and having to find new social outlets, um, including gaming, which is what I'm going to talk about today. Um, Now, I've just started back on my journey with therapy, and I call it a journey, and not to make it sound too dramatic, but I mean it is. It's a big deal. If I'm a lot of us, especially Gen Xers, I think could use a lot of therapy, um, because believe it or not, we actually, I mean, regardless of what it's done for us, I think it's not too much of a disputed point that we pack a lot of trauma into our life. Um, some of it has given us good skills and good traits, but a lot of it has still made us weird. But anyways, on top of all of that, I've got anxiety, and so it has made it really hard for me to meet local in-person gamers. And there's a few factors that go into that. Um, First of all, um, I think a lot of people aren't playing in person like they used to. I think the adaptation, or to playing virtually when we had to, has led to a lot of people becoming very comfortable with that and deciding that it is something they want to continue doing. Uh, Take that, add that to the inevitable and general shift in the age demographic of gamers, and it can be a kind of an uncomfortable place for an older gamer. Um, and that's if you don't have anxiety. Because you start with the basic thoughts of, do I fit in? Do I have anything to offer? Um, what are these kids into these days? With their Pokemons and their their uh, their shenanigans. But um, I think it's a trap though that we work ourselves into. I know I have, and I'm going to say up front when I'm speaking from my experience only. So my experience differs from yours. Great. Um, at the same time, by all means, in the comments, if you feel comfortable doing so, go ahead and share your experiences, your tips, your tricks, your concerns, your problems you've run into. Um, and I will also then say this: understand that the things that you have run into, or the things that others have run into, are not necessarily the things that others have run into or that you will run into. One of the big lies I tell myself um, a lot is that things are going to be this way when I go out and try and interact with people because this guy over here has had that problem, or I heard from my friend that this is a thing, or, you know, because we are internet folks, if you're here, you're probably one of the internet crowd. We hear, we read, we watch whole YouTube channels about horror stories that happen in gaming and all the bad things that come out of gaming. But I think the truth of the matter is that we as gamers tend to want to be around one another. Um, yes, are, but there have also always been those people who make it difficult and who make it uncomfortable, who perhaps are just dicks and douches and really are not indicative of the community as a whole. Um, so that's one big lie I tell myself, is that I'm not going to get there, and then it's just I'm not going to know how to interact. I'm not going to know how to interface with these folks. Am I going to be seen as an outsider? Am I going to be seen as that old dude who's here? And it's funny. I was talking to Cody the other day, and GM Cody, if you don't know him, um, but I'm going to bet most of you do. And he and I were talking about how back in the day, the older gamers in the community were the dudes, just they were like the cool guys. These were the dudes that we all looked up to, and having them around was just neat. Often they were the guys who got you into games. They were the guys who promoted you as a gamer, and really embrace. You'd run into those guys who are like, I don't want to play with kids, but again, those guys have always been there. They're always going to be there. Um, I feel like, and this, of course, is my experience, my point of view, but I feel like in when I go into shops now and when I deal with younger gamers now, there tends to be this them and us kind of attitude that wasn't there back in the day. Now, again, that could just be me imagining or fabricating problems thanks to my anxiety. Um, but or it could just be a few bad experiences coloring my view of the overall community. Good morning, RPG Grandma. Um, yeah, there's always been jerks in every hobby, um, uh, and that is the rational, logical thought process that I am fully aware of. It is trying to move that to the forefront instead of um, listening to the anxiety that I have to get over, and that I'm working on. But I don't feel like I'm alone there. A lot of gamers are socially awkward, and so we tend to already come from a starting point that is a little bit behind the eight ball. Hello
Good
there.
morning.
Good morning,
Morning.
sir.
Socially awkward. It's like my battle cry. What's going on?
I know. I summoned the bear. By
Socially
the power of socially
awkward.
awkwardness.
I will punch you in the throat. What? I just asked to borrow your dice. Murder. What's up, man? How you doing? So I made some stuff. So so making new gaming friends as an older gamer. Interesting damn topic.
Yeah, specifically in-person gaming friends, because I think it's really easy nowadays to make online friends. I think we've all proved that.
Oh, you
know,
hell, we were talking about you at 3 a.m. last night.
Were you now?
Well, I wound up doing so a gaming friend of mine I've known for 24 years died. And
I saw that.
I've been kind of handling. Thank you, but it's weird. People are claiming we're sorry for my loss. It's not my loss. It's his family. I feel bad for me.
Still though,
I know it's just a weird thing. It's the way I was raised.
Have a casserole.
Exactly. I have some fucking casseroles. But it's weird.
And they wonder why you and I are 300 pounds, right?
Well, there you go.
Feed your feelings.
So I got on last night because I just wanted to chill. I couldn't sleep and all that. And we wound up talking, and it was me and Cody, and eventually Brian joined us. And your name came up, of course, because you're part of this little weird group. Sean's part of it as well. And it was Brian kind of like, he sort of put his foot in it. Even Cody was kind of like, what the fuck? Because he was talking about how he thinks that their Star Trek group is better than the new Star Trek group. And we were just like, what? He goes, well, it was because we're all friends. And he started trying to explain that we're all friends. And you're right. It's easier to make friends online than it is in person now. And it's weird. It's really weird. Hey, Grandma, what's up? I wouldn't even know where in this city to go meet new gamers.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, and I think, and then this is part of the dialogue too, I guess, is that, especially when I'm dealing with the anxiety on top of things, is are the obstacles I have to meeting new gamers really obstacles, or is it just things I've fabricated? There are 2 really good sized gaming stores, 20 minutes drive from me.
Yeah.
They both have very transparent and well broadcast event schedules. Even like they have days where they do specific things. So if you're looking for a type of gaming, it's very easy to find. But I've lived here a year and I've been to each of those stores twice. So whose problem is that? It's me. The resources are there. And I've gone to Game Night is one of the big independent stores over here. It's got 2 locations, but it's still an independent store.
Yeah.
They're a decent shop, lots of places to play. They've got an entire day of Star Wars gaming.
Yeah.
Like, it's all the new stuff, but it's still a bunch of like-minded Star Wars people. They've got an entire day of Warhammer. They've got an entire day of D&D. And they've got plenty of room to where even with the house full of people on that day, there's still room to play a pickup game. I've been in there. I've interacted with most of the staff, and actually, I've been there maybe 4 times in the year I've been here, mostly just in passing. But out of those interactions with the staff, I've only had one where it kind of left me feeling lukewarm. I've even had good interactions with some of the patrons there. Not many, but then again, I'm the new guy, right? I've been in there 4 times. The other place is Miniature Market, which is a huge retailer. Right, they're a distributor, retailer type of thing, and they have a giant game floor. And Monday nights is D&D night. I could go in there and play D&D with people if I wanted to. Have I done it? Not a fucking single time.
So why do you think that is?
Because I have built up in my head that it's gonna go wrong, and that's that anxiety bit. Because there's nothing saying logically and factually that that's going to happen, because every time I've gone into stores in the past and gotten comfortable in communities or gone to parties or at work or whatever, it turns out people generally like me and I do really well in social situations. However, getting into those situations, couple that with the ADHD problems, which is like the executive dysfunction and the object permanence and stuff like that. I flat out forget that these game stores exist until I need them. So those, I think, are some of the obstacles. But 3 years of reinforced isolation where I'm not even going into work and dealing with people has really hurt.
Yeah, working from home doesn't help either. For me, where I am, there's no English community anymore. it's all French. So I
Oh
wouldn't even
yeah.
know where to find English gamers in Montreal at this point in time. In fact, most of the ones I used to know I met in college. That's where we all met, was at college together. So it's even harder here. And it's sort of something that I noticed a lot of the Americans don't understand when they talk to me. Well, just go to your friendly local gaming store. Dude, there aren't a lot of them, and they're going to carry mostly the big selling English stuff or what's been translated into French. It's not going to, you're
Yeah.
going to find weird games. It's hard to find groups. I was lucky at one point in time because I was dating a girl who was part of a French vampire LARP. And we would go and I'd play in that LARP. And then I met a bunch of cool French people through that were, had a similar interest. But walking into a French gaming store, even though I speak French, it's awkward. It's like, people don't realize I have social anxiety. I'm the guy, you take me to a party, my back goes to a wall and I
Oh
watch
yeah.
the room,
You and I are a lot alike that way. I'll go
Yeah.
to a party and I'll have a good time at a party, but you have to drag me there
Oh, yeah.
probably. And um, part of this stream came with I just got done doing a bunch of my therapy homework,
Okay.
which is analyzing social situations and stuff, and why is it that you feel awkward here, and what have you done to overcome it. And I realized like all the situations were like, at least outside of gaming, that I've gone to and been really ended up having a good time and being comfortable with, is because I had my wife as a wingman.
Yeah.
She was there. She was there as the anchor point, and it makes me realize like that could be a strategy for me to get out and do stuff. Find somebody I can go with. Like my brother locally, I'm like, dude, you got to go to game night with me a couple of times just so I can get in the door. Because once I get comfortable in a setting, I'm fine. I can go back to, because I don't remember having all this kind of problems going into stores locally and just saying, hey, what up, dudes? Of course, I also wasn't the guy who was 20 years older than the rest of the gaming group a lot of time.
That's a big thing for us now. When I was or mid to late 20s, I was living in Vancouver, and I get a call from my buddy Dan. He's like, dude, I want to move to Halifax. You want to come? And I'm like, that's the city I was born in. Let me think about it. And we went and we had a beer that night, and he convinced me, let's go for the trip. A couple years later, I was like, dude, why did you want me to go with you? Because I wound up staying in Montreal because we got here, and I was like, you know what, I know enough people here, and there's work for me here, and you can have fun in Halifax. I'm staying here. And he came to Montreal eventually, and I was like, dude, why did you want me to come? He goes, because you can meet people anywhere. You have no fear of just starting conversations with people. And I still have that skill, but that 20-year difference really freaks me out now, because my 20-year difference is now a 30-year difference. I'm 53. These kids are 21, 22, 23 at these stores. What the fuck am I going to talk to them about? What am I going to relate to them and not be that creepy old guy? Because I remember when I was that age, I'd see the creepy old guys at the gaming stores and be like, what the fuck's up with that creepy old guy being around
Well,
here?
and Cody and I had different experiences with the older game guy, because the older gaming dudes, when at least in our experiences, were sort of like the god guys. Like, ooh, there's that old dude with the ponytail, and he's been playing D&D since '74. He smoked a bong with Gygax, and
I highly doubt, but there you go.
no, it would be snorting coke. But
yeah, exactly. Gygax didn't strike me as a weed.
That was in the '80s. But no, yeah. So it's. But the thing is, I don't know how much of that is true. And you and I relate like that's how we felt.
Yeah.
But then again, I bet you both of us have had experiences where when we finally got a chance to meet and know some of those older guys, they were just regular gamers.
See, I never had that experience, because the only older people that I got to know or hang out with was in the film industry, right? It was the old stunt guys or the old actors and stuff like that. And they were mentors, right? They were absolute mentors to me, because I just saw them as men who had achieved their goals and were people to learn from. When I got to the gaming, it was weird. And I know it was programming, and I know it was bias, and I know it was prejudice that had been beat into me. But it's like, why is this 55-year-old man hanging out with a bunch of 18-year-olds? Playing make believe, I never, and it's stupid.
What's funny is that you've had that experience in the film industry, that those people above you in age were like the mentors, but somehow that never equated the same way in the gaming. And I think that's Cody and I had the experience, the similar experience to what you had in the film industry, because we were never in the film industry. That or at least I know I wasn't. I don't know about Cody. He's got a voice. Maybe he was radio or something. But so to me, those were the mentors. But I also had a very positive encounter from my earliest days as a gamer. Yeah. When I was 10, there was this guy named Tom in our parents' social group. He was I mentioned him before on streams. There's a computer programmer for the city, long-haired, kind of hippie pot smoker guy who would, like, the five of us, 10 to like 10 to 15 would go over to his house and like spend the weekend playing on his computer, playing D&D with him, playing board games and stuff like that, just hanging.
Yeah.
And by today's standard, that would be like
Oh my
super
God.
red flaggy.
Fuck,
But like
there was
a time I went over there by myself for a weekend to do yard work for him so I could earn money to buy comics and gaming stuff. Now imagine that. But he was also like he was in the Big Brothers program. He was a mentor at his, like he would take me down like on that weekend. He was just a cool guy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because like on that weekend, I did some yard work for him. I earned my ducats. He took me down to the city, into Seattle the next day. First, before we went to the comic shop, he took me to work and showed me, this is the wonderful world of computing. This is what I do for a living. Very mentory, right?
Yeah.
And then he took me to the comic shop and I bought my comics and then I went home on my bike. It was one of those things where you ride your bike to Tom's house with your backpack. You spend the weekend at Tom's house. You play D&D and you play on his computer all weekend, and then you go home. And then he's like at the family barbecue and everybody's, whatever. But that was my experience.
Okay.
So for me, those older gamers were never weird. Actually, the weird ones were always in my own demographic. It's like, what is with Squinty over there? What is with this guy in our group, in our local store? We called him Blinky because like he blinked inordinately often. It's like, what is wrong with your eyes, man? It's like,
I feel you on that. I 100% feel you on that.
I'm going to touch on some of the starred comments here real quick.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
RPG Grandma, Unicorn Hobbies participate when it means some. So I think, your whole point of view on gaming is a lot different from mine. Obviously, being a woman in gaming and stuff like that, because I've talked to my wife, who is also a woman in gaming, not as hardcore as you, RPG Grandma. She is a gamer, but she's a gamer, whereas I'm a gamer. But I think the experience is there. You're the only old guy there, or you're the only, whatever there. You can still take that. You just kind of have to, just deal with that you're going to be different. But that's the hard part is the dealing with it, right?
Well, it's the desire there too.
Yeah, I was mentioning earlier, add to the fact that I have anxiety, but also I have ADHD, and that makes it really trippy because, like, not only do I have problems doing the thing, I have problems doing the thing. Like, there's the actual impetus to there's the executive dysfunction part of that, which is actually getting the momentum up to do the thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the coping with doing the thing.
See, I have anxiety, but I also have OCD.
Mm-hmm.
So I get really particular, and that is a pain in the ass.
That explains a lot in my interactions with you.
Yeah.
But not, and I don't mean that in a negative fashion, but that does explain. That's a bit of transparency. Also, RPG Grandma says, I usually game with folks, and this has been a thing another advantage I've had, and this is, I think, one of the things that makes it really hard for me right now. When you're used to playing with people that in their homes, and not in shops. Like I've said on stream after stream, my gaming experience has been very different than a lot of people because I've never really played with strangers.
Me either.
That said, that always allowed me the security to put myself out there.
Yeah.
Because I always had the core group to fall back on.
Well, I was lucky in the.
And I could also tell myself that Gen X-y attitude of like, well, fuck you guys. It's just you because these guys think I'm cool.
Yeah, well, there is that. But I got lucky in the 90s because my 80s group, when I left to go to college to radio school, when I came back, they had splintered into 3 different groups. And sadly, not to be a dick about it, the 3 GMs that were running the 3 different groups were all really just shit people. And then I came along playing in all 3 games, and then suddenly I picked up, people from each of their games to create my core group in the 90s. And it sort of became this thing where it was a very sort of incestuous group within the English community here. But I was the guy who wound up with a waiting list on my games. I had no problem getting players because it was people talking about them all the time and pumping them up at their other games. Now I'm so disconnected from that. Like, I have my regular group. They are people I've gamed with for well over 2 decades, 3 decades at this point. They're who I game with, and I'm good with that. I don't need to go find new blood. I don't need to go drag new people into it.
Yeah.
But some people do. Some people want that.
So Mac, also welcome Mac, and to a couple other people like O'Neill Flynn and that have snuck in. Yes, I have actually been diagnosed with a type of anxiety. Mine's mainly just a really strong, severe social anxiety. I don't have like anxiety where I like, but what about the turtles? I don't have that. But I have a severe social anxiety.
I have authority anxiety. I don't do well with authority figures or people who dominate.
Yeah, which probably I've mentioned has likely been exacerbated by isolation.
Yeah, it hasn't helped. Yeah. Fuck no.
Let's see. Yeah, I think this is the thing. My problem too, is that I've had that gaming group forever, and then I just don't, like, overnight. I don't. And one of the things that's really annoying me is before I moved here, one of the reasons I even picked moving to St. Louis is that I had been involved in an online game with my brother and a bunch of his local friends who were all playing online because it was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea was, hey, these are gamers that I'm going to be able to meet and be able to, hang out with when I get there. There's clearly gamers there who I have interacted with virtually, at least, and who have then become, friends outside the game, And out of those people, I have socialized with only one couple, like, twice. And that's just a matter of opportunity. But so, like, there was also that kind of like non-delivered possibility, it's like, oh, this is great, and it like informed my decision to move here and everything. And then no. One last comment real quick. Phil, you're a good guy, but honestly, this comment kind of POs me. That's like telling a depressed person, have you ever tried to not be sad? If it was that easy, yes, I would do it. But it's not a rational thing. The anxiety is not because I can sit here and rationally go over it all I want, but it's tackling the irrational that becomes the issue.
Have you tried not being afraid of heights? No, Dad, I haven't tried not being afraid of heights.
Yeah.
So do you have kids? Because that's a dad response, like a dad way of handling a problem. Have you tried not doing it? Yeah, Dad, that's the solution.
It's also a very Gen X thing. Like,
yes, sadly, we are.
Don't be a dick. I mentioned earlier in the preamble on the video too, on the stream here, that Gen X, you see all these social media, Gen X, so badass and so tough. We're also broken as fuck.
Yeah, we're dicks. We're
every one of us has got a pile of trauma so big, and I use trauma in a broad sense, not the trauma, but I'm sorry, being a latchkey kid and left home alone without the security of your parents and all of that, it is subconsciously traumatic. It gave us independence and it made us stronger, but it's still damage.
Well, so Henry Rollins had one of the best statements I ever heard about it. He said, scar tissue is stronger than regular tissue, accept the strength and move on. And that is what our entire existence is as Gen X kids, is we were, scarred. We stayed strong. We survived. Sadly, there were some who weren't and didn't, and we lost them along the way.
Well,
but as a
the
general
other
rule,
joke that goes with our generation is that we all ended up either in prison, in the army, or in rehab.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, I know from hanging out with, we had a hard time understanding millennial and Zoomer reactions to things like bullying. We're like, and the guy called you a name. So what? My bully used to punch me in the face every day when I got to school on command. It would pop right in the face.
Yeah.
But it's a different thing.
I was a bully because I was bullied.
That's fair. That's fair. That happens. But it's just different. So it's hard for us to relate to the younger generation sometimes, but we should try harder. We should definitely try.
I try real hard, and actually, that's the thing. That's why I keep in touch with the generation war. We always talk about the edition wars. There's the generation
Oh
wars,
yeah.
and it's funny because like uh, uh, my oldest went through a troubling time in his life, and he was really just convinced that my wife and I were the devil. This is like after he was out of the house and he was kind of come back and he was trying to um and he made all these assumptions, all these assertions, not assumptions about us that just didn't play out. He's like, and you guys made fun of me for stupid things like my music. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm like, dude, there were music from you and I both shared songs from each other's musical tastes on our playlists. I might tease him like, "You listen to that emo crap again," kind of thing. But it was never like making fun. But again, it's that perception. It's like when
Yeah.
you're not in a good place, and that subconscious, that kind of going back to the topic here, it's not about a rational worry about. Yeah, I mean, there are clearly practical, realistic, objective issues. Lack of game stores, lack of time. For me, scheduling is a bad thing. I mentioned all these stores have these great days where they have all these things planned out. 50% of those, not even, let's call it 60% of those or more of those days, I work. And because I'm on a West Coast schedule and I'm living in the Midwest, I don't get off work until like 7:30 local time.
Yeah.
And so the stores close at 10 because this is the Midwest, and that 24-hour late night game cycle that we're used to in like big cities on the coasts and stuff like that isn't a thing. Like back home, the game store stayed open as long as there were people there playing, unless the owner had something to do. And so there are the very practical, realistic, objective, concrete obstacles, and then there's those things that we have to deal with that our brain concocts,
Yeah.
whether or not we want it to or not, whether or not we can identify it as an issue. For you and me, it's a generational thing. Are these young kids going to even have anything? Am I even relevant? I guess is kind of I guess you could put it, right. Or am I going to be that get out of here old man? There's also reading responses from individuals and applying them to the group. I go in there on a Warhammer night, for example, and I walk by a table and I get a dirty look from the guys playing. My brain is real quick to go, all these people suck.
Yeah.
Real quick, gonna step in on some more. Got a lot of good starred comments here.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was very much against playing online until I had to. If I was going to game, I had to play online because I did not have enough interested players in my house to just truck it through and go, okay, we're going to have the family game. I tried. Trust me, I tried. But my kids and my wife were not interested in that. Well, I mean, a few games, but yeah. They're YTOSR. I'm not sure what the YT stands for. YouTube.
YouTube OSR, folks.
Yeah. YouTube OSR, and the OSR is, of course, its own complicated, tangled mess.
It's its own minefield.
Yeah, because like, what part of the OSR are you in? And then there's the weird opinions that they have on what. And we're at 14 people watching. Must be a topic that interests a lot of older gamers, which is, I think, my demographic. Old folks I know from forums and RPGs published projects. Yeah. I think a lot of us are just having to adapt, especially if you're a publisher. You have to be online, I think, nowadays, almost. Otherwise, who's going to know about you?
Yeah.
Because the stores aren't going to carry your stuff.
Nope.
Back in the day when there were maybe 6 different systems total, it was easy for the stores to dedicate time. You might have the occasional pop. I used to be able to say that I had tried everything that had made it to the shelves.
Yeah.
I can't say that anymore.
I used to have a couple of stores I'd go to. Two were this is going to be the commercial stuff, and then one was this is the hobby shop where all the weird stuff is and the stuff you never heard of, and it was cool. I miss those days.
But it also
Yeah,
used to come out at a slower rate.
much slower.
It was a trickle. If you got a new game, it was once every couple of years, if that, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
nowadays, like it's Tuesday, there's 6 different games out. It's like who could actually keep up? Let's see. Nerds Nerd, hey, welcome. You snuck in.
I got her hooked on COH yesterday, by the way.
Hooked us. You're the Amway thing. Yeah, that's a minefield.
What is Amway? I don't think we have that in Canada. What is Amway?
Amway is a pyramid scheme.
Well, we have those, but what's
Yeah,
the Amway
it's
specifically
just one of
one?
the large. The Amway one goes all the way back to I think the 50s, and
Okay,
it's
what
been
is it
around
though?
for a long time. I don't even know what the
Okay.
product line itself is. All I know is Amway has just it's been a bane. But there's always those little pyramid schemes around. There's a person at my work who, after I stopped working in the office with her and after she left the company, I really realized um, was one of these people. For her, it seems to be working. So she must be on one of the upper rungs where you can actually make it pay.
Mm.
And she just uses it as a reason, as a way to be a disabled veteran. And she's legitimately disabled. She was like, as far as
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
remember, she
Hmm.
fell down one of the elevators for the airplanes on the aircraft carrier. you know,
Jesus.
Messed up her back. But so yeah, but it allows her an extra income so she can then be a disabled vet and live on those benefits and then have another income stream. And then she also is an artist and sells her art. So
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
helps, but still it's kind of cringy, the whole methods of those. In late aughts, mine got so bad, like social crowds, like grocery store. Uh, Yeah, that is not. I don't have crippling anxiety, but thank you for bringing that up because I guess I really want to say this too, and I want to say this very loud. Don't just read a bunch of stuff on the interwebs and the Facebook groups that support these things and just make a decision for yourself. I
Hmm.
have had multiple professionals tell me that I'm ADHD. The only thing that I haven't done is actually gone in and got the treatment for it, which requires a psychiatrist. Um, to get the medication and everything like that. And because I've never thought I needed it because I thought I was doing really well, and I was until I was left to my own devices and didn't have as many outside influences. It was easy to stay motivated to do things for gaming, for example, when I
Hmm.
had a gaming group. When the other guys are showing up to game night with their painted stuff, it reminded me to paint my stuff. You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Mac. I'm glad you were able to get it identified. I hope you got properly treated for it. But this is important, guys. See professionals about this stuff. And if you have problems, look at therapy. It helps. I did not get into therapy until my wife and both my kids were in therapy. Uh, and because I don't need therapy. I'm a good natured guy. I've got no problems. And boys are wrong. And it's helping. My therapist, I think either my original therapist, I think either died or quit, but he kind of ghosted me. So like it went for like
Jesus.
almost 2 years before I started therapy again. It was before we moved, and it was during COVID, and he's a occupational behavioral therapist,
Okay.
which is really hard to do virtually because there's a lot of physical tactile things that you need to do, and his focus was mostly on younger people. Actually, he was my kids therapist for a while. Um, but anyways, yeah, therapy is not a bad thing, guys. It's not a horrible. It's not. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you need help. Just like if you can't reach the cupboard and you ask a taller friend, or you get a step stool. That's therapy. And proper diagnosis and medication is not a bad thing either. Just make sure that you keep on top of that because medication is an evolving thing. My kids, one of my kids, my bonus kids, I've mentioned them before, the extra kids that I got from my kids bringing their friends home. Um, she had a really interesting journey through her ADHD diagnosis. She went from being a zombie to being overly manic to basically being cracked out half the time to eventually finding the proper mix of meds that made her a very productive person. And the transformation was amazing. And she's still out there, and I still hear from her, and getting a little misty because I miss her. And she's my bonus kid. I won't say her name because she's kind of a private person, but hopefully she gets to buy that van that she wants to live in someday. Because she's all about the van life, or she was the last time I talked to her. She's also a massively junior league all-star roller derby player too. So, but cool. All right, so I'm just gonna try and burn through some of these, and then I gotta. But we got Sean, always with the jokes, Sean. But yeah, a lot of us pack around a lot, and then yeah, and that's I think kind of even in situations where I've proven that I have a lot to offer and that I'm good at stuff, when it comes to interfacing with new people in the same situation, I still feel this way. Like, it's a big imposter syndrome. It's why I shut my YouTube channel down for forever before I started it back up. It's because I'm like, what the fuck do I have to say? What am I saying that no other YouTube channel isn't already saying with much better production values and in a much more succinct, rehearsed, scripted way? Yeah. But those are the lies that our brains like to tell us that make it tricky. Oh, if I've missed stuff you guys have been saying, I am sorry. There's like 24 comments that have piled up. Yeah, but there's a lot. There's just, I think this is clearly this is a touch point kind of subject for a lot of folks because we're getting a lot of good comments.
Well, I mean, we are a socially awkward hobby, right?
Well, it's so funny is, who was it? I had somebody arguing in YouTube comments, of course, surprise, that I think you're wrong. Like, I think it's wrong that saying that gamers are in general just socially awkward, and I'm like, really?
Have you met us?
I'm like, what little corner of gaming have you existed in where everybody is like functional and normal?
Yeah.
I mean, those exist, I'm sure. We know those people, the people who are like professionals, they have a life and they still game, right?
Yeah.
We know those people. And I aspire, it's a little late in life, I'll probably never achieve it, but that's something to aspire to. I mean, being a gamer and still being able to function, that would be awesome. But I think a lot of us start in this hobby because we are the weird ones. We have the interests in things that the ordinary folks don't have interests in. We have the attention span for these weird, quirky little corners of made up universes that a lot of people don't have. And nowadays that line is thinning, because it's become more mainstream. Being weird is cool.
Let me get some coffee. I'll be right back.
That's cool. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I've been with this company for 16 years that I'm with, and I probably could have been doing better elsewhere, and I probably could have also moved up the tree as far as my position goes. But I'm comfortable where I am, and it works for me. Yeah, Mac. My parents moved me around a lot, so I was always new in a school, and they also would tend to move me in the middle of key years. Like, they moved me in the middle of 7th grade, and they moved me in the middle of 9th grade. And so, yeah, I ended up, and I was also often a poor kid in well-to-do neighborhoods. My parents did something that my wife and I have always done with our kids too. We tended to stay in districts and areas that are above our pay grade, for lack of a better term, for better opportunities for the kids, better education for the kids. But that also meant that, especially back in the 70s and 80s, and when it seems to have been a bigger thing than it is nowadays, according to my kids. But yeah, I was always in the hand-me-down clothes and the poor kid who just didn't fit in. So yeah, when I got big and hormones hit me, in 7th grade, I decided that I was just going to start getting people before they got me. And that turned me into a bit of a preemptive bully as well. I was a bully because I was bullied. And I think that's a part of the bully dialogue that often gets missed. And I was really happy to see remember when bullying was like the big thing that everybody was doing. There's a lot of media about it. I was really happy to see one of the made-for-TV movies where they were very clear to show that the bully was the way he was because of reasons. He wasn't just a bully and that we have to deal with him and bully's bad. Yeah, he was, you know, whatever the reasons there. And then, like for me, I was picked on, so it became a way for me to pick on other people. Um, let's see. Not exactly sure what you mean by this, Mar Hockman. Again, I think you have an idea there, but I'm not sure it came out fully formed. At some point, bully behavior is counterproductive since it makes the bully obviously evil. Nah, I don't know. I need to know more information. Let's see. Some of their siblings in middle school during the day. That is, yeah. I think right there though you hit the nail on the head. Especially you look like you're the same generation as me, same age group. Let's face it. Back then, if you could find a way to be popular, you tended to be safer. In high school, once I finally got settled into a district where I got to spend a few years there, I had friends in a lot of the different demographics there because I never attached to one, but I had a very valuable skill that made it really easy for me to interact and interface with people I could draw. And I drew pictures openly and all the time. So, when I'm supposed to be listening to the teacher, I'd have a notebook open drawing something so kids would see that I could draw. And there'd still be occasionally that guy be like, nice mecha, nice transformer, dickhead, whatever, but there were lots of people who were like, oh, that's really cool. Next thing you know, you got a football player for a friend. Next thing you know, you got a cheerleader for a friend. Next thing you know, you're hanging out with the goths and the lit kids, you know. But so yeah, that was my outlet is art. To the point where in my gaming groups, I used to have the nickname of Pencil Whore because if you had a character you needed drawn, you would have me do it. Like, Pencil Whore, draw me this character. Hey, you're on camera now.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
See.
What beans?
No, you didn't insult me, Phil. The thing is that, and I know that wasn't your intention, but there is a very common statement that people with neurodivergent issues and actual psychological issues have, which is people seeing them as chosen behaviors or behaviors that they exhibit because they don't try hard enough. Like, you said, have you tried just ignoring what people think about you? If I could do that, then I wouldn't have a problem. And it is something I'm working on. And once I get here's the secret to, at least for that, in that regard, once I'm into an environment where I am comfortable, I'm able to do that. Like at work, for example, somebody's like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, I don't give a fuck what they say. I don't give a shit. But also, not giving a shit is often just a very big, warm, cozy blanket you just throw over things to where you act because you actually do give a shit. But it's easy to just say, fuck you, I don't care. And then you go off and you're like, yeah, actually, I do care. Or my brain makes me think I care. But you didn't insult me. It's just one of those, maybe you don't know it, and I'm not trying to like call you out, but it's something. If you have friends who have things they're struggling with, the last thing they need to hear you do is say, have you tried not? Because they hear it all the time. Have you tried not drinking? Have you tried just going cold turkey? Have you tried being happy? Those things are, it God, I mean, it gets bad. I mean, it's to the point where you're like, well, have you tried being a boy like you're supposed to be? You know, like, yeah, regardless, there's always there's that, there are voices, there are people that when people are having trouble, regardless of what the problem is, there's always somebody out there trying to real quick trying to make it just sound like it's just something you could just fix if you just tried harder. And in a lot of cases, it's not a matter of try. It's a matter of your brain literally not working right to allow you to do it. And so
Well, I
you didn't
think,
insult, but
no, I wasn't insulted either. But I think we need to understand less and less and less that normalcy is a myth,
yeah.
and everyone's brain is neurodivergent. Everyone.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's just a matter of what degree. I think one of the best things that they've started doing is, like, for example, they used to have ADD and then ADHD. They used to have them both as separate things.
Yeah.
They have now combined them into one thing, as far as I understand it, and it's more of a sliding scale. It's a spectrum, kind of like what they did with autism, where they used to have individual names for different kinds of autism, and it's just more like autism is a thing, and it's a sliding scale. And we have different degrees of it. Most people have some quirk that they deal with that they don't have rational control over.
Yeah.
And one of the most common ones is phobias, or even just intense fears.
Yeah.
You've talked about that. There's a difference between playing with a guy at a table who's like, I think spiders are icky, and putting a spider in a game with somebody who and graphically describing that spider when you know that there's somebody who's irrationally, uncontrollably terrified of spiders.
Yeah.
Those are different things, right?
Well, look, I mean, there's a level of we disagree on certain things, clearly, and one of the things we will disagree on is the bending over backwards. Now, I also disagree with the idea of attacking. So, I mean, there's the middle ground of it all, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to adjust my game because Steve doesn't like snakes, so snakes are never going to show up in the campaign ever. That's just silly, But I'm not going to, hey, let's put snakes in every fucking session and they specifically attack Steve. That's there's a fine line between the two. And I think that's something we've lost in society, and that's making it hard for us to connect with strangers, is everybody is so polarized right now, picking their sides, and everything is extreme, right? Everything is extreme. So it's hard to go out for someone like me to meet new people, because I'm like, what am I going to say that's going to offend them? What thought do I have that is going to be too far for these people? Like, I got to, I don't know.
Am I going to say too much?
Yeah.
Am I just going to speak?
Do I hold a basic belief that they find, repellent, but in my generation was considered progressive, you know?
I have a real big problem with just like gushing everything about me when I meet people. And it's a defense mechanism. I know that. It's basically, if I put it all out there, they can then pick and choose what they don't like. And if they're still here, cool. My wife calls it verbal squid ink. It's like, you just spew this cloud of data about yourself out there, and the people who can make it through the cloud are the ones that are keepers, and the other ones who were deterred by your cloud of information about you, well,
interesting.
Good riddance.
Mine is to be gruff and mean, and very unapproachable until I find the people who can get past that barrier, and then they're the ones that are worth knowing.
So Mac Thompson had a couple of things he wanted to say. Is like, I've noticed a lot of my past is coming on in the supernatural novel I'm working on, and then he follows up with saying, trying to decide if I should keep it out or use it as therapy. A, write what you know and draw from those experiences. It'll make your writing probably more believable and more honest. But also, writing is good therapy. So even if you don't ever write it to the point where you think it's polished and published, getting it out of your head to where it doesn't exist just in your head can be helpful. But by all means, personal experience does tend to make writing better, as long as you know how to write it in, and you're not using it as like weird self-insert stuff. I'm pretty sure Stephen King has some issues with cars. for example, because he writes a lot about terrifying cars.
Sure, George Lucas has issues with his father.
Yeah. I visited the town where Stephen King built a library and dedicated it to his daughter.
Mhm.
Yeah, he built that building to be creepy. It has an air conditioner that sounds like breathing and red security lights that glow from its big windows at night. So it looks like
Nice.
it. Tell me that's not on purpose. Uh,
But art is a form of therapy, and writing or creating and getting and finding you working out your inner shit, that's normal, man. They don't be afraid of that, Mac. That's
no, yeah.
absolutely 100% therapeutic.
Most
Cathartic.
therapists are going to tell you to keep a journal, try and write, or at least give you some sort of assignments to follow because it helps to get the thoughts out. Again, even if you're not going to use it even if it doesn't prove to be useful for the story that you're writing, there's nothing wrong with getting it out on paper. You can always edit it to make it good story later. But if you can use it, use it. And they always tell you, write what you know, right? So.
And remember, if you do show it to people and they criticize it, judge the criticism from where it's coming from.
Yeah,
Like you were talking about not giving a shit.
Necessarily.
Sorry, was that?
I was gonna say they're criticizing your work too, not necessarily you.
Some are, some aren't. I mean, some
Yeah.
people are just attacking the person because they're shitty people, and that's the way
true.
they are. But you were talking earlier about not caring what people think and how it's a blanket and it's this and everything. I agree and I disagree because about around 10 years ago, I just stopped giving a fuck what people thought about me because I realized I wasn't the monster some people were painting me out to be, and that was their shit that was coming in my direction. I became more aware of what I was doing, and I tried to be less stompy on people's emotions and feelings and tried to be more aware of my actions. And I make mistakes. I'm a human.
Oh, yeah.
But I just don't give a shit what you think about me because I'm not going out of my way to hurt anybody. So if you think I'm a bad person, well, sorry.
But that's doing that the right way. And that's the thing. There's a lot of people who just say, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah.
As a smokescreen. And there is, if you can get yourself to the point where you truly are not worrying about what other people think, then like for me, if I could get there, then I think a lot of my social awkwardness would kind of melt away, because one of the big problems I have walking into a group of people that I don't know is, how do I fit in? What do I have to offer?
No.
Do I come across as weird? Am I talking too much?
Bye, Chris.
Am I standing too close? Am I talking too much about like my history as a gamer, and they really don't care? Like with my brother's group, for example, I went and visited my brother's group, and demographically, I am so out of place. They're all they're like mid 30s to like early 40s ish, at least 10 years younger than me, because they're younger than my brother, who's 6 years younger than me. All of them have little kids. They're almost all finished college, educated professionals. And here I am, para blue collar, because I'm in blue collar work. I just sit at a desk though, right?
Yeah.
I coordinate blue collar guys, right? I'm gray, what do you want to call it? And my kids are all adults. My kids are all adults, and so I have some college, but I never finished college. And I would sit there, and the couple of times I've been with these groups is with this group, I'm like, I realized like I have nothing to say when it comes to kids. They're like, oh, my kid did such and such today, and all I can go is like, yeah, it's a thing, they'll get over it. Or you're doing like, I try to use it as like a point of view, like, you're doing all right, this is a thing that's going to happen. But I think they get tired. They may not get, and this is the problem, they may actually think of that, see that as like, this guy is cool, he's helping me out, he's making me feel better about the way I'm raising my kids. But I'm just like, I'm talking about, am I the awkward guy who's like, yeah, it's all good, curmudgeonly old dude, or even talking about games, like, okay, there's one guy in that group besides my brother who's played older editions of D&D.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about D&D, and I'm like, yeah, I remember back in the day, one guy is not, he's like, tell me more. But the rest of them are like, I mean, he's been in a second edition campaign that's been going for 17 years.
Yeah, here's the thing. Something you just said really means something. I would rather be the guy who's presumed they've spoken too much, or they've been too socially awkward, or they've been too dominant to force in the conversation and be wrong, than the guy who is and doesn't read the room. You know what I mean? Those guys really like just, you know, the ones that push and push and push and push, and they don't realize that they're being the loud, obnoxious human being. And I may have been like that in my youth, and I think I've learned not to be. But I'd much rather be wrong on the side of caution in those situations.
Thank you, sir. I did not realize how much damage I had done to my kids. Inadvertently. I was never like openly and like actively harmful, but I didn't realize that a lot of the things that I was doing did them harm. But, you know, unlike, you know, parents, like my generation's parents who actively did things.
Yep.
Like, you know, at the same time, though, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt because a lot of them also were going with the tools they had. Those were the tools they had.
Mm-hmm.
I like to talk about my mom and her generation a lot because my mother, I mean, I always describe her as like a recovering hippie, right? She was trying to break the mold. That generation in the 60s, right? Yeah, they tore down the old system, but they didn't have anything to replace it with. They're like, all right, we got out of the jail. Now what do we do?
Oh.
And because I remember when my brother was born, because I'm 6 years young, I was 6 years older than he is. I remember my parents, every fucking month, there was some new book on raising your kids in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because that generation is like, what the fuck do I do? That's not what my parents did.
Yeah.
And there's like Dr. Spock, who I thought was amazing that a Vulcan was writing parenting books. I was a kid, and then I realized they're not the same. But he was a doctor. He was a scientist on TV, right? Because in my life there were many PhD adults, so I'm like, PhDs are doctors, right? So Dr. Spock, he's a doctor of science, right?
Yeah.
But I also thought that the Sandinista guerrillas, was mom, they're giving monkeys guns. Because I didn't realize that gorilla and gorilla were two different things. Because I was 7.
See, the thing is my parents were not boomers. My parents were silent generation, right? They were born in the 30s.
Oh,
and
really
so sorry, was that? Sorry?
You have really old parents.
Well, I was the last of 5, right?
Oh, yeah.
My eldest sister is the end of the boomers, you know, so it's the way it is. But so for me in the 70s, I wasn't getting the Dr. Spock treatment or any of that. I was getting the swift blow to the back of the skull when I was being stupid. You know, I was getting that kind of stuff. So I think I have a harder time relating with people from my generation who were raised with that more hands-on-y type thing, as opposed to I got the hands-on-y type thing.
That was your answer on Amway, by the way.
Yeah, no, and Sean had said they're in Canada. Maybe it's Quebec. They're not in Quebec, or they're not a common thing in Quebec.
They may also change their name depending on where they're. Like I work for Comcast, right? That's the company I work for. I found it interesting. Like, we don't offer cable TV services in Canada, but we have business in Canada.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, because we actually had guys come from within the company. Like, one of the supervisors in my office was Canadian. He was like not like moved to the States and naturalized or anything. He was like down here working. I'm like, how are you working for the company up there? He's like, oh yeah, they have business services and stuff up there still. I'm all right. So, but yeah, let's take a look here. It's not grocery stores for me. The mall, however, me going to the mall may as well be a Navy SEAL op, because I'm there like, we're going to insert at this end of the mall. We're going to go to the store. We're going to get the item. I'm going to stop off at here and get a pretzel. Meet me. The extraction zone is at this exit.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm in and I'm out. I don't want to going to the mall during the holidays, because the kids we'd always do the pictures with Santa. My kids is really cool because the mall had this excellent Santa, looked exactly like a Santa, right? And he was super cool. It was the same guy throughout my kids' entire childhood. So we have year after year after year of pictures of Santa with the same Santa. Same Santa kids growing up. But I was miserable. I'm like, first of all, I'm having to stand around in line. I'm ADHD, and standing around is death. And then there's like so many people. But yeah, I get it. Lists are my friend. When on the few occasions, 20 people follow. I think I've hit 21. I've hit an all-time high on the stream. So if I've missed you as you've snuck in, I apologize. Grimlocked, I see your name on there. You're new. I've never seen you in here before, but thanks for coming. I think it's an important topic, and I'm not sure if we're necessarily giving you any tools, but if nothing else, understand you're not alone. So when you go into that store, that game store, or you try to interact with that game group, realize that there's probably a very high likelihood that the vast majority of the people there are also going through similar issues as you.
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
So you're probably going to find kinship with those folks before you find issues.
Mhm.
Most gamers, once you get in and get to know them, are decent. It's just that foot in the door, and I understand that that's hard, and it's it's a thing. That is I understand that one. That's a hard one. I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that gives me great benefits, which in the States is the only way you're going to be able to afford it, unless you're independently wealthy, or self-employed and doing good. And even still, it's a chore. Different discussion here between dirty history and hobbies and from the hilt. I'm cool. I generally generally have I'm not religious. Let me just put it that way, and for reasons. But if folks can find solace and find useful help through their clergy, and awesome. I'm not against religion. I'm just against a lot of the people I've met that follow religions. So, used to tell you, it's like, religion's fine. It's some of the jerks that are in religion that I have an issue with. But
yeah, I always say it's not Jesus I have a problem with, it's his fans.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work with a guy who every morning would come in, and he's one of those people that I've often described as Bible dependent. And again, I have no issue if you have a religion, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If it works for you, that's awesome. I have a lot of, it's not for me, right? But he would come in and he would read from his Bible before work every day, and clearly by knowing this guy, that's how he was getting through. That's one of his coping mechanisms, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But he had some really weird ideas. I remember sitting down with him and talking. And he was like, angels are real, but demons and devils are not. I'm like,
huh?
I'm pretty sure you don't get to pick and choose.
Yeah.
But and I run into that a lot. That's one of them. That's the not to diverge into some tangent here, but that's the issue I have when it comes to a lot of folks who follow various religions, is that they want to pick. And I think that's the problem that we run into with religion in general, is that when people pick and choose the parts of their religion that they use, and I say use because usually it's being used for an agenda, to promote a way of life. But I also recognize that it has a strong community building, aspect to it. It can provide, like in the case of Mac, it can provide you the solace and the help that you need. Sometimes, fortunately, a good number of the pastors and priests and counselor and various officials that are out there are also licensed therapists. So, they actually do the work and get, they're not just like, God says it's going to be okay, so it's going to be okay. Here's a old book.
Yeah.
But so tools for let's kind of bring it back around. So finding gamers in real life, it can be hard nowadays because of course a lot of people are wanting to play online. It can be hard because the gaming community seems to be very divided. And I say seems to be because I think the online view of that is not necessarily what you're going to run into in real life. Because I think people in person tend to be a little less extreme than they are when they're online.
Yeah.
I mean, face it, a lot of this shit that gets said online, people would never say face to face, and they probably would actually have very different conversations meeting face to face. Same thing in your game store. So you may be like, all these kids are all into the 5e and they're not open to anything else. Are you saying that because that's what everybody online says, or that's what all the YouTube videos say, or all the articles on whatever blog you read say? Or are they actually like that? I mean, the thing is, you need to go out and find out. And I think, as an older gamer, trying to meet other gamers out there, coming in with the spirit of trying to mentor, mentoring, maybe not, because you don't want to come into the door trying like, hello people, I'm here to change your world, I have much wisdom to give. You don't want to do that. No, come in and
Have you heard the good news? Our Lord and Savior Gygax is amongst you.
Do you have a moment to talk about? But the thing is though, is if you get in, I would say one real good thing, and this is the thing that I'm going to do. For example, I mentioned there is a D&D night locally to a store. Yeah. 5e isn't the game I want to be playing more of. I already play 5e. I'm not against 5e. But I will go to this store and I will play in these campaigns to meet people. To meet gamers who also might be open to, hey, have you ever thought about playing an older edition or this other game? Because all I know is every gaming group I've ever been into is while we're playing the game, we're also talking about the other games. Or go to a board game night. If you are a role player looking for a role player, other role playing people, and you're not finding a night to go into that you can hit for RPGs, maybe go into a game for a night for board gaming. It's a very casual type of a setup where you can sit across and actually chat while you're playing a lot and get to know people, but you have that social lubricant of the board game going on, and most gamers cross-pollinate between platforms. I mean, there are a lot of hardcore, I only do board games. There are those people. I only do miniatures games. There are those people. There's a lot of people. I wouldn't say most. Maybe most is wrong, but there's a lot of gamers who play on multiple platforms. And so board game nights might be a good night to go. Maybe your foot in the door is look for local bring and buy or bring and sell, swap meet nights at game stores. Because while you're going around looking at the tables and seeing what people are trying to get rid of, you're also seeing what people are into and who's into what. And you're like, oh, dude, those are really great such and such miniatures. I haven't seen those, have been out of production for such and such. I remember my army of these. Next thing you know, it's an hour later and you've been talking with this guy about your miniatures games and you've got a new friend.
No.
Or at least a new acquaintance, right? Next thing you know, he's like, I got a group who every Friday we meet. It sounds like you're kind of cool. You want to come by and push some lead?
The danger these days is, and this is, I think, what a lot of people are worried about is, like Grandma just said, people are feeling a lot more comfortable being really open about shit they shouldn't be in public. So it's like, hey, we're talking about lead for an hour, and now you're trying to explain your theory about 9/11 to me. Oh, fuck.
Well, that's okay. I mean, then you just walk away. You're like, I'm gonna make my purchase or not my purchase, and I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah.
So yes, that is true. Hey, I'm glad you made it, man. Yeah. So yeah. Jason is one of those guys who, and I'm sorry, I called you by your real name, but I've introduced him as Jason. He's been on the channel before.
Yeah.
He he's had some really doozies of interactions at local shops, which are in that category of like horror story. Just
Yeah,
in
is this the
interaction.
guy you've told those stories about where people pick fights with him or something in gaming
Yeah,
stores? Yeah,
like he's
yeah,
just in there buying stuff, and they're picking fights with him over things. It's like just they don't even know him. So yeah, and negative interactions in middle and high school. Everyone pretty much knew I was. Yeah, that's. I never had issues in high school because of my gaming. It was because of other things: being skinny, being awkward, being weird, hanging out with the chess club, whatever. You although the high school I went to, the chess club, had cheerleaders. I'm like, how does that go? Like
fucking West Coast.
the quietest cheering. That wasn't even a West Coast thing. That was my school. My school was so big. Yeah, I don't know if I don't. In Canada, they have the A system, the double A, triple A, blah 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 system of
Not
school. High school.
really, no.
So in the sports categories in the West
Maybe in
Coast,
other provinces, but not
they're
here.
in the West Coast or in the U.S. They have like schools. At least in my area, they have them rated by a number of A's, and it's really a designation of like how big the school is, but also like, and usually with the size of the school comes the number of sports they play and stuff like that. My high school was so big that it had sports that nobody else played, or we had to travel to other states to find competitors.
Interesting.
We had a rifle team because we had a rifle team. We had a judo team. We had a tennis team. We had a golf team. We had, and then all the normal teams, right? But everybody, the school was so big that and the budget was so big that like, I don't know if it was a joke or whatever, but originally, but yeah, the chess team had cheerleaders.
Well, see, in Quebec, now I don't know about the other provinces, it could be very different, but in Quebec, most sports are done at the municipal level, not at the school level. So, we play hockey, you play hockey for the town, not for your school,
Yeah, that's a different thing. I mean, it's definitely not like, I mean, my high school was so big that there was only 2 schools in the entire state that were on the same level. One was an inner city school, and then the other one was like on the other side of the state. So, anyways, so how do you make gaming friends when you don't want to hang out at the game stores? Well, that's hard because gaming requires other gamers. So if you're trying to make other gaming friends in person, you're going to have to concede that point or stick to meeting people at conventions, or finding some rare outlet that's not a game store. For example, I know there are across the country several bars and stuff that are having like D&D nights and stuff, which is kind of cool. So I'm not sure there is an answer to that one, but nothing says that you necessarily have to go there and hang out at game stores. I hate hanging out at game stores because I don't have a ton of disposable income, and I feel really awkward being in a store and taking up their space and their time and using their tables and whatever and not buying something. So usually, even if it's just like a bottle of paint or a new brush or whatever, but you don't have to hang out at the game store. You can, if you look for stores that have specific nights that cater to your interests, go to those nights, get in on a game. You're not hanging out, and you can go there and leave when your thing is done, or stick around. Because here's the other thing: yes, you may not want to hang out at a game store. That's well and good, but at the same time, once you get there, and this is, I'm gonna equate this to me going and hanging out with my wife and her high school friends at parties when because back home we would have these big get-togethers. Everybody get together. We drive down and hang out with the people that she knew in high school. And I was always very resistant. Oh, it's not my group. Those are all your friends. Da da da. My wife would stick to her guns. She's like, "You're gonna go." and we're going to go and you're going to have fun. You know, you're going to have fun. Then I'm going to have to drag you out of there. And that's what happened every freaking time, to the point where I was like, eventually I got to the point where I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to go. It's going to be fun. These people know me. I like them, you know. But for the first few times, yeah, she like would call me out. She's like, I'm going to have to drag you out of there. You know that. You're going to be having such a good time. You're not going to want to go. And so, Dirty History and Hobbies, you may not want to hang out at the store, but if you go there specifically to do the things that they're doing on the night that they're doing things, you may find yourself hanging around in the parking lot, or, you know, to like, I don't know how many times I've gone to, you know, back home, I would go to a game store, we'd play, and then for the next, I got to get home. An hour later, I'm still in the parking lot talking to you because we had a good time. But if you're going to meet other gamers, you've got to go where other gamers are. And there aren't a lot of places that aren't people's private homes to meet other gamers. It's going to be game stores, it's going to be conventions, or like I said, you know, if you have a bar in your area that's doing, you know, D&D night, that's cool. But I don't know if there is another answer other than just conceding the fact that you're going to have to go to a game store. Don't hang out at the game store. D&D is from 12 to 5. I'll be there at 12. I'll get into a game. I'll play till my game is done. I'll go. If I'm still feeling it, I might hang out and talk with people. But that way you meet other people. But you're not obligated to hang out at a store. I mean,
another option is just find social points like libraries and things like that that have posted boards, and post up a, you know, hey, player looking for game, or GM looking for players posters, and you know, you'll get people will reach out, man. People that are in those places will see it and go, oh, you know. And
yeah, the old good old LFG, right?
yeah, no, man. One of one of my best friends in the world I met through that. He was in a band, and they decided they wanted to play D&D, and they posted a thing in the college saying, we're looking for someone to run D&D for us. My friend took them up and brought me in to be a ringer to help them play, and you know, there you go.
Yeah, this is an issue I have. I will always play off compliments, and, you know, like if somebody's like, "Oh, that was really cool," I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." That was, you know, it's a thing. Or, "Oh yeah, the one that I always give, hey, yeah, I appreciated it, but you know, it's what you do." You know?
I have something specific for this.
What's that?
Film industry. For most of my adult life, being recognized by someone for something I've been in, and I've always be like, well, yeah, you know, and I'd play it down. And it wasn't until about a decade ago I realized the correct answer is, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We really had a lot of fun making it. Because when they're giving you a compliment, it's not about you. It's them sharing their experience that you were a part of. And that's what matters. And you need to acknowledge that so they don't feel, you know, upset about it. It's you saying thank you to them for taking the time to have appreciated something you do. And it's a hard one to do, but once you get it, it's easy.
I've really been trying hard to not get involved in some sort of complicated way of like accepting the praise and just saying, yeah, thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to give them. One of the biggest problems I have, honestly, is, and my kids called me out on this one. Oh man, you know, you learn a lot from your kids. If you folks out there who have kids who aren't grown, and even ones who are grown, you will learn from your kids. My kids, for the longest time, I had a lot of trouble getting them to do things. And, you know, I was never going to yell at them and tell them, you know, like, because I said so, because I'm your dad. Because that was my hang up from growing up. Like, I wasn't going to be like my parents are like, I'm your fucking mom, and that's why you're going to do it, right? You know, I'm like, you know, I was like, okay. And so I would lead in with like, hey guys, today, you know, I'd give them this big preamble, like explaining what I needed them to do, and then tell them what I needed to do. And my kids are like, Dad, just tell us what you need us to do. Just make it simple. Just tell us if you need the dishes done. Tell us you need. I don't need. And I feel called out by that, and in a good way, because it actually, I know how annoying it is when you try and like. I'm going to equate this to when you are looking online for a recipe and you have to read the fucking 30-year history of this recipe before you can get to the recipe. That's what I was doing to my kids every time I had a chore for them to do, because I felt like I had been pushed around so much by my parents. The reality of that is, and that going back to like what is real and what our brains tell us is real. The
Mhm.
reality of it is my parents were very likely just telling me to do things because that's what they needed me to do. But my childlike brain, my immature brain with all those wonderful hormones, made it a, well, what are you fuckers trying to tell me what to do kind of a thing, right? They weren't, but that's what I equated it to. And then that imprinted on my brain. And as an adult, I was going to avoid doing that without, and then in doing that, I was like, that long explanation. So yeah, at the same time, saying thank you for compliments is effective. People, that's all people really want. They don't want like, oh, that's really great. I'm so glad you liked it. It's a little thing I do. Like if somebody tells you that they really enjoyed your casserole, they don't need to know the recipe and what special things you do. Just say, hey, thanks, I appreciate it. Glad you liked it. Because I'm that guy. I'm like, oh yeah, it's all about roasting the peppers. And if they want to know, they'll ask. But you can take the positive.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Just say thank you.
Oh, well, that's good. I like that. I mean, it is.
Hi, Mrs. Mechhead.
He's got a huge family, so hats off to Mrs. Mechhead and Mechhead. They got a lot of kids. Let's see. Watch and see. Hey, Jim, you made it. Cool. It's a complicated subject, and like I said, this came out of me. Good morning, Cody. I was doing my therapy homework this morning, and I'm being like, and they asked for you to describe a scenario that made you uncomfortable and that you were having problems with. And of course, the first one that came to my mind was making new gaming friends. And I'm like, wait, there's something to say here. And it's tough, but ultimately it's one of those things that you want to really examine what the realities of it are versus what you're thinking it is. And if I can say, like, if you're having problems making friends or meeting new gamers and the problem is that you feel awkward, because I think that's probably the leading issue. There are clearly going to be geographic limitations, limitations like Bear said, where there's no good stores in the area or whatever, because of the language barrier or whatever, but if the issue is a social issue or an anxiety issue or an awkwardness issue, it pays to analyze the realities of it versus what you're thinking. And that's really what I'm going to have to do. I mean, the reason I am at this point in my life is, I mentioned earlier in the stream, I've been here in this new place for a year, knowing where the resources are, and I haven't made use of them. That's on me. That is completely on me. The stores are good stores. They're neat and welcoming, at least, staff wise and layout wise. They're not dingy little holes in the wall. I've spent plenty of good times in dingy little hole in the walls too. But the only real thing keeping me from getting there and meeting people is me. And I even have one instance where it worked out perfectly. But have I followed up on it? No. So when I moved here, one of the nice things was one of my longtime internet internet friends, who I know through miniatures, lives locally. Awesome. So I met him for a game of Frostgrave. It's a miniatures game if you're not familiar. And we played. While we were playing, a friend of his came in and was chatting. And we had a good chat post game. And we even exchanged information. Have I reached out to this person? No. It's on me. So not only did I go to this game store and have a good time, but I met a new gamer in the context of my gaming who is a really cool sounding dude. So I clearly know that it works, but at the same time, I still got to convince my brain that, it's not as bad as it seems like it could be, what it really is, the actual thing that's going to happen. If I go to a game store and I run into a real big standoffish crowd that night, is that really the true nature of the shop, or is it just that night? Your sample size, I guess, as you could call it. But also, so I didn't meet anybody to hang out with that time. You know, that doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means that that particular experience was bad, and so it should not necessarily be indicative of the experience as a whole. It's you got to try a few times. Yeah, I think one of the problems with the social anxiety is that we build this one and done mentality. Like if we go into a situation and it fails, clearly the entire situation is fucked, and it's not worth trying anymore. That's a trick that our brain tells us that to do, but it's not true. We had a bad time. That's like trying Thai food and it's not great at that one restaurant. There's 30 other Thai restaurants, or maybe Thai food isn't your flavor of food, but maybe another food is. It's like your game store experiences. And I'm just going to pull up some comments as we talk here from the various things that have come up, from the various conversation stuff. But it's try analyzing where those anxieties are coming from and really breaking down what could actually happen. What is the reality of what can happen? What's the likelihood of what happens? And if it does happen, what does it really mean to you? But what are also the benefits? And this is the big thing to think about is and to really highlight is what is the benefit if you succeed? Ultimately we're looking for other people who share our hobby. And so are the little trials and tribulations that you're going to go through trying to find these new friends, these new gaming partners, whatever, are they really all that bad when compared to the possibility? Because if you are a gamer and you've been gaming for a long time, think about what you have from your prior experiences. I have lifelong friends whose kids call me uncle, who I call my niece and nephew, who are like brothers to me and sisters to me, not just friends, because gaming. My best friend back home, literally, I met him and we became friends because we were both at a game store at the same time. It was raining like a motherfucker, and I asked him, not knowing him at all, hey, you're heading north, can you give me a ride? And we talked on the trip back to he was heading north, so we driving north, talked gaming. By the time he dropped me off, we were friends. So what can you gain from going out and putting yourself out there? And how does it stack up against what actual damage is going to happen? What actual fallout's going to happen? Worst case scenario, you meet a dick, you ignore him, you leave. Yeah, bears in the store that day, and your experience. No, I imagine if you actually ran into Bear at a store, that he'd be thrilled because you'd probably be speaking English.
No, that's not at all. But it's funny when you guys were talking about going to malls and all that kind of stuff. A lot of my friends love going to malls with me because I just put on bouncer face, and those crowds part like the Red fucking Sea for me. People just get the fuck out of my way, so I don't have the same experience in crowds that other people have.
Well, and that's also how you carry yourself. It's because people get out of my way too. But the thing is, I don't want people in my way in the first place. And it's not the people being in my way. It's just the noise and the clutter. For a brain that can barely hold on to one thing long enough anyways, a mall is just so much. It's so much static. Yeah, that gaming radar is a thing. But understand now, there's more of us out there than there ever were.
It's weird when you get it wrong.
Yeah.
You convince that person's a gamer and they go, no, I'm not into that stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize for introducing my weird thing to you.
Yeah, this is the thing. I tend to accumulate gamers when I go into different workplaces. It's like, I've been in the same job for a while, so I haven't had that experience too much. But as new people fluctuate in and out, because I am forever, you're like, oh, you're a gamer. You're another gamer. Um, but see, the thing is, though, I think it's important to understand that the divide in everything is generational, because people in general are generational. Um, um, I will, I will say this though: we're probably our own worst enemies in the regard to your last part here, where the younger folks are more closed off. Probably because, and I'll say it, probably because a good chunk of them are too tired of having people calling them out for just being them. The same sort of shit that we would just say "fuck you," I don't care. And then they get piled on, like, and I'm sure we had this when we were their age too. We just had a different way of dealing with it. But I think there's always generational pressure. The previous generations are always comparing themselves or comparing the other generation to themselves. And so that just creates that divide. It's there in everything, whether it's music or food or, cars or whatever. There's always some divide. But there's also a lot there in common. The fact of the matter is, yes, there is a divide, but you all like games. And the other thing is, not everybody's required to like you, and you're not required to like everybody. That's the other
What?
thing. No, you're not.
Ah, damn it.
Well, you don't like anybody or anything, Bear, so you're okay.
I like how when you're someone who is picky, you're considered to be just horrible because you don't like things. It's like, no, I'm just very particular about what I let into my world.
Your biggest problem, Bear, as far as I could see in that regard, is that the way that you express that you don't like things is not just like, I don't like it. It's like, it's shit.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I'm allowed to do that, and that's something.
Oh, you are, but
It's
a lot of
something
people who aren't used to communicating in that fashion are not going to understand that what you're trying to say is, I think it's shitty for me.
Yeah, no, I get that, but at the same time, maybe we all need to stop putting our personal agendas into things we like and making them the definition of who we are.
I suppose we could stop being people and individuals.
No, I know plenty of people who don't do that. And that's the thing. And they, as a result, you can actually have a disagreement with them and they don't take it personally. They just go, well, fuck, you don't like it. That's cool. But people who wrap their identity up into their likes will take things personally when you don't like them. And it gets weird sometimes because you're like, how do you, I don't like the thing you like, but you're offended that I don't like it. Wow. And how do you
and I honestly don't have a problem with people not liking what I like. I have a problem with people trying to say outwardly and outright that it's just objectively crap, for example, because they don't like it.
No, but I think everything's subjective. I've said that many times.
I know.
I think
and I know that about you, and I know that about you now. But if I didn't know you, and you're just, and this is, I think, and this is as much me as it is you, because I'm the receiver, you are the transmitter. There are two parts to that equation. I don't know that. And I can only use I can only use the tools I have.
Yes.
To receive.
So let's go back to something I said much earlier, which is what I present is the thing that's hard to deal with because I want to find the people who actually are smart and aware and think more than just react. So you become one of those people because despite you going, you're able to see through, think, and move beyond and have a discussion that where understanding is achieved. You're someone I would rather talk to now because I know we can have intellectual conversations.
Yeah.
That's my filter. Everybody has a different filter on how they do stuff, right? It's just the way it is.
And kind of roping this back to you, I think when...
To me, okay.
No, bringing things back around. I mean, when you, to the topic, when you're in shops, because you're going to run into this. when you're in a store and you're like, hey, cool, anybody here playing D&D? And the guy's like, that game fucking sucks. Yeah. You're like, all right, do you just not like it yourself, or you honestly you're going to run into that. You're going to run into the Bears of the world, and you're going to run into the
Sure.
Eli's of the world. There's going to be that guy who goes, that game sucks, but what he's really just saying is, I don't like it, which is okay.
No, for sure. Shadowrun.
And I've tried with that game.
That game sucks.
I have tried with that game. I just prefer Cyberpunk.
Me too. So I want to address what Grandma said here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are like that, except when they're in punching distance. And that's one of the, I know it's a privilege I have. I know it's a benefit I have, that I carry myself in a very, very, very intimidating way. And I'm quite capable of violence if I have to. And I'm quite capable of just making my face look like something you don't want to fuck with. So people tend to be very careful what they say to my face and in front of me. And I prefer things that way, to be honest. And I know from friends who have not had those experiences, there are the smaller people, there are people who are not as intimidating, or they're just nicer people who people will be really obnoxious to. And I'm just like, just punch him in the throat, man. That'll cut this conversation. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, I get it. So maybe you need to walk away from those people, right? And just go, all right, cool, and leave.
Yeah,
but like Eli was saying, his buddy, they follow him, which is really weird.
Oh yeah, they followed him outside and then cornered him. But the other thing is too, a throat punch can be mental and emotional. It does not have to be an actual physical throat punch. You can.
Fair.
I'm just saying, like, you can take that attitude with people. Like, the key thing is that yes, there are people who are now convinced that they can go and be extreme in their opinions to your face, but at the same time, like Bear said, you can just leave. You are under no obligation to listen to them. Also, if they're going to go that far, you are completely within your rights and your permissions, I guess, if you want to give it a lack of a better term, to just call them on it. Say, look, dude, I didn't ask for your bullshit. Fine. You don't like it? Whatever. Your opinion is your opinion. Fuck off with that. And I'm just going to go over here and look at this rack.
Yeah, just this idea of being accosted in a store is so weird to me. It's like,
I mean, the worst I ever had to deal with is, hey, can I tell you about my Call of Cthulhu Illuminati Cyberpunk Pokemon crossover? I'm like, fuck you, no. Yeah. I had a guy come over from the other side of the store because he heard me talking about Cyberpunk and started rolling off about his way too many hyphens mashup campaign. That's what I used to have to worry about with people being over, accosting me in stores. Or if you're in a comic shop and some guy's like, well, actually, that Superman sucks because the only true Superman is the, I don't care.
Actually, and all this, the legal ramifications. Did you miss the part where Eli said there's a mental throat punch you can do?
Yes. Well, you have to have a certain psychic score.
Well, yes.
Sonic score. But no, I mean, you can just look at him and go, I am throat punching you so much right now, and just be happy. You can imagine that asshole bursting into a ball of fire in the middle of the store if you want.
Just reminded me of the Mike Tyson line. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the head. Well, you can just look at them and go, okay, go away now, or I'm going to punch you.
I think here's my take on this particular issue. So the younger generation, I don't know what you necessarily mean by the younger generation, is what age categories. They're still figuring things out. So yes, they may be closed up in a weird loop of their trauma, but at the same time, they're more aware of that shit than any generation previous. And imagine how hard just try to remember how hard it was trying to figure out how the world worked when you were young, and then equate it to having all that extra information. Like, okay, I know what trauma is. I know what it does to me. I have no fucking clue how to deal with it. So all I end up doing is balling up inside of it. That's where my kids had some trouble and where we had to work through. It's like, look, I'm not saying that your feelings are wrong. I'm not saying that you're not feeling what you're feeling. That's never been what I've been saying, even though you may feel like it was. But what the funny thing is that both my kids kind of went down into the depths of their feelings and eventually came up on the other side, and we're really good. And I think a lot of people out there in the younger generation are still figuring their shit out. They know how to recognize a problem. They have the strength of will to speak out against it. They just haven't learned or gathered the tools on how to communicate it effectively and usefully and functionally. They probably need therapy, but their parents can't afford it, or they can't afford it because they're 20 something and nobody has a job. Well, not nobody, but very few people have a job at 20 something in the US that can actually allow them to cover their therapy. But let's see. I'm gonna have to actually call it here because I actually have to get to therapy in a few minutes. Social interaction back in the day is what. Yeah, we can say that it was really easy in our day, but that was our only option. We didn't have the internet. We couldn't sit around and parasocial was not a thing. Now you can have parasocial relationships because there's an option. You either were social or you weren't social. There was no parasocial. And that's an option nowadays. So yeah, I think older people either are complete shut-ins or they just go out and deal with shit. And then there's some in between. But as also the other thing is we also have to realize as naturally speaking, just generation through generation through generation, as you get older, your ability to relate to the world decreases. Because I used to know what it was, and they kept changing what it is with the old Simpsons thing.
And now it is weird and scary.
And it'll happen to
you.
Exactly. There's it's actually proven stuff that people become more nostalgic and they become more conservative as they get older because we're trying to hold on to what we know and very few people can keep themselves fluid enough to keep it. I've always tried to keep myself connected, and I use my kids a lot for that, and I say use because all right, what are you guys into? And it still happens to me as cool, I finally got a such and such account. Dad, nobody uses that anymore. Well, fuck. You were using it yesterday.
Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah, no, totally. It's also something you touched on is a friend of mine has this theory. He goes, old people aren't more conservative or more, intolerant or that. It's just they're fucking tired because they've seen it so many times repeated that they're just done with it by the point they get to be old. And I think that's a very good point.
All right, I'm gonna have to only cover a couple more of these real quick. I want to respond to dirty history and hobbies. That is true, and I have that same issue about going into stores and not buying things. However, understand that stores, that's part of their business model. Game stores, that's part of their business model. That's one of the reasons game stores put play spaces in their stores, good stores, is because people in the store doing the things promotes sales. When I was doing my short stint as a paid DM, the reason I was in there to be a paid DM and the reason that the store didn't take anything that I made, like everything that got brought in went into my pocket, was because people in stores playing games does two things. People in stores playing games means they're going to likely buy stuff. And yes, this happened. My players would come in, they'd have a good time, they'd pick up a new set of dice or that most recent book that they might not have bought if they were sitting at home not playing or just coming in more casually because they got jazz. The other thing is people in stores doing the thing makes the store look like it's busy and it's got life, which is good for the business. And the third thing it does is if you're doing the thing is therefore worth doing. Other people see you doing the thing and will likely want to buy the thing. So don't feel bad about going into a store and just taking up space unless you're just standing there doing nothing or you're in there being a negative influence. And I've been to those stores where there's a guy's like, yo, you're playing that game? Only weebs and doofuses play that game. Oh, I used to play that game, but the last edition was second edition was the best. Don't be that guy. You can have your preferences, but try to be positive about it. I've run into game store owners who are like Scott, what's this game? That game sucks. Why is it on your shelf? Game stores are their worst enemies. But yeah, so don't feel bad about going in a shop. Guys, I really wish I could keep answering comments. There's a lot of good stuff here, and I'm not even going to do the final roll call. Everybody who showed up, I really appreciate it. I think it's a great subject. I think it's a great topic. Bear, thank you for coming on and providing some welcome wisdom and counterpoint at times.
And solid opinions that are presented as objective facts. Yes, I know.
Yes. You curmudgeonly old bastard.
I am.
Your moniker is very fitting. You like a bear. But no, real quick, gonna throw up a couple of ones. Yeah, Cody and I talked about this the other day. I feel like those are things that we do to ourselves, though. The whole I'm here, like I was just saying to Dirty History and Hobbies. The store knows that there's going to be a number of looky-loos, and they also know that there's going to be a number of times where you visit where you don't buy anything. But ultimately, if you're there and the place is comfortable, and having people in the store doing whatever you're doing is part of the comfort. Walking into a store where nobody's doing anything or nobody's there is not a good look for a shop. So going in there and just being the guy, the other thing too is sometimes you can be that guy who helps the other person make the decision. Sometimes, and this is a fourth benefit to you being there, if you're at the shop and a guy comes in and he's looking over whatever book he's looking at, if the shop owner tells him that it's a good book, it's a good game, whatever, that's the shop owner doing their job. If the guy over on the next rack looks over and goes, it's a pretty good game, play it yet? And starts up a talk with him about it, then he's probably going to listen to your opinion more so than he would the game store owner, because you don't have anything vested in it. You're just another gamer talking shop. So yeah, all those reasons to not want to go into the store. If you don't have money to spend or you're not buying stuff, you just feel like you're taking up space. And it's something I'm going to have to tell myself. You can be useful to the store. Just try and buy something now and again. We all need dice or paintbrushes or glue or, a miniature. Volunteering at your store is another thing too. If you have a game night at your store and they need GMs, sign up to be a GM. Sometimes they just need coordinators. Can you be there if they do a food snack thing, can you be there to help be the food snack guy? Yeah. But yeah. All right, I gotta go, guys. Thanks for showing up. I hope you guys got something useful from this. I know I got something useful from it, and talking to you guys about it really helped me solidify and some of the thoughts and feelings that I've had on the topic. Keep it going in the comments when this thing posts to YouTube. I mean, by all means, I do read every comment that comes through, and I will even reply. But on that note, I got to say goodbye. This is one of those topics that I think deserves hours of conversation with more people on screen. But do have a good one. Get out in game and try to break down your own personal barriers and realize that it's not going to be anywhere near as bad as you think it will be. Have a good one, guys.
Get off my lawn.
It's comfortable.